This episode of Fresh and Buds is brought to you by one of my favorite bakeries in all of Wraith. And you know what? It's the best in Mysteria too. It is the Shifting Winds of the Mystic Yeast, folks. It is such a good bakery. Hell, stop by and try a Zenye. They are so good. But folks, I think it's time for Fresh and Buds right now.
Fresh and
All right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh and Buds. I'm your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all my buds, and it is time for our quarterly, maybe trimesterly
kind of run there.
Lore episode with DeadSummerArt. Obviously, everybody knows DeadSummerArt. Great YouTube channel where you can go watch some great lore videos on Flesh and Blood, and is basically part-time co-host of this show at this point. And you know, Kale is awesome, and they're there, and we're here, and we're gonna have a good time because part of the Mistveil is really humming right now, and Mysteria I feel like has like a lot, and I want to get into it. And I thought, who better than DeadSummerArt? And well, how you doing, buddy? First of all,
Yeah, going all right. Yeah, we'll get into it when we talk about what's been going on with me, but yeah, not as much Flesh and Blood lately, but I think part of the Mistveil is pulling me back in, so yeah, I'm very excited.
Just when I'm out, they pull me right back in with those shiny chi cards, and the Fabled is interesting, and I wanted to definitely talk to you about the Fable, see if there's anything there that, because I don't know if we saw the Fable when we talked heavy hitters last time, which was just a deathmatch arena anyway, which is like the whole
That's
point.
what I expected.
Yeah, but it seems like we're back on landmarks, but we'll get to that. I do want to catch up with you and then talk a little bit about heavy hitters, because some stuff did come out post us talking about it last time, and talk about your favorite cards from heavy hitters, and then see what the heck's going on in Mysteria. Now, what is new in your world? You said not so much a lot of Flesh and Blood. Is that have anything to do with heavy hitters?
Yeah, so Heavy Hitters wasn't really my style of set. I mean, it's a good set, don't get me wrong, but in terms of flavor and whatnot, it wasn't really up my alley, which is fine. You know, not every set's going to be. And then with very little lore, which we'll talk about, coming out for Heavy Hitters, I just became a little bit like disenfranchised. I don't know the correct word to really use, but just lost a bit of interest. Along with my local fab community is kind of dying. So I'm trying to resuscitate that and breathe some life into it. So there wasn't too many people playing, along with a set that I didn't care too much about, and there wasn't really any lore. Just that plus other things going on in my life meant that I was kind of falling out of favor with Flesh and Blood a little bit, which is probably the most I've had since maybe pandemic times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but part the Mistveil looks very cool. And there's a bunch of lore for it, which is very exciting. So I'm being pulled right back in, which I expected. So
yeah. No, I'm super happy it's pulling you back in, because that's the weird thing about like all these different regions, and like even stories that they try to tell. It's not always going to be for everybody. I definitely voiced my same kind of concerns with bright lights, just metrics, just like doesn't make. I mean, I had you on to make it make sense for me, and it did in the end. And I came around on it, but it certainly wasn't like this is something that like scratches that itch of things that I like, and I could totally understand that and empathize with it. But I'm glad you're coming back in. But the local scene thing is tough too, because I've dealt with the same thing, right? And a different store opened, and it pulled a lot of people from the stores that I was going to there. So all of a sudden I was the only one going to the other one, and then I moved, and then it was really far to drive and it not fire. And that's really disheartening, right? Because as the name of the game states, we want to play in the flesh and blood. So, it's tough for me. And now, to be honest with you, Kale, I am in a situation now where I haven't been to an armory in a long time because there's no armories going on the nights that I'm available. So it's just, there's plenty of armories going on, but it just doesn't work with my schedule anymore, and I have to like force it, which I try to sometimes, but life is also something, I guess, and making content is another thing as well. But Speaking of content, I know that, a little bit ago you started just kind of uploading your narrations and your stories onto like Spotify and I guess other podcasting platforms, or was it just Spotify?
Just Spotify, at least for the moment. So
yeah, which was really cool. And I just popped them on when you did that, and what is there any plan of doing some more of that? Did you like that, or
yeah? So I'm basically going to try and upload any videos that I make that work as just pure audio form. I'm going to upload them straight to Spotify, just because, like, over the years, so many people have told me, oh, I love to chuck this on when I'm doing like housework or chores or driving or whatever. But obviously, having it on YouTube, unless you have like YouTube Premium, you can't like lock your phone if you're playing it through the phone. So if I chuck it on something like Spotify, it becomes a lot more accessible, and it's very easy for me to do. Plus, it just looks nice having like this Spotify library of just like all these like episodes laid out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to make future videos. I'm going to make them with Spotify and audio only in mind. But some videos won't work with like just the audio only format. So like any spoiler video doesn't really work, obviously. Anything that's very cinematic that requires you to look at visuals obviously won't go on. But a lot of my longer form content, like lore pitches where I'm discussing like just various theories, or if it's like a breakdown of certain regions, like my last video was, which was all about Solana, that was perfect to chuck on as audio only. So that's kind of the plan with it at the moment. I'm definitely going to upload a ton more, but yeah.
I think it's a great idea. When I started this podcast, I was solely focused on audio. Now, I do focus on the YouTube side as well, because, it just so happens that people want to also watch and listen to podcasts on YouTube, but the Spotify option is great, right? Like we were talking like right before we came on, like how, we're coming out, like this is like, it feels like we're very much out of the pandemic now, and people are going back to work and commuting again and listening to things in the car, the bus, the train, on their bike, whatever. And just having something like some lore, it's just nice, right? Like, people listen to audiobooks. I don't see why they wouldn't listen to some lore if it's something interesting. And it is a lot of stuff that's interesting. So we're going to talk some about it now. So are you going to do more of the regions? Are there any more regions planned for up next on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so the idea is to go through pretty much everything. So I've said before, like, I like the idea of my YouTube channel kind of being like a Netflix library, or just like a library in general, where you can see information about pretty much everything major. So I want there to be one for every region, eventually one for every hero, but that's a bigger task. Yeah, so there's going to be, the next one is planned to be Aria, but I haven't started work on that one yet. I've been working on something else. The next video, haven't actually officially said it, but it's going to be a Heroes of Wraith video, so a video about a hero, and it's going to be about the Emperor.
Ooh.
Which is a very odd choice, but I had some kind of like cinematic ideas that I wanted to try out. And because I haven't been able to get a spoiler video for like Part the Mistveil or Heavy Hitters, I've kind of wanted to channel some of that energy of being very creative and cinematic in video style to, something else. So, yeah, I'm fairly close to finishing that one, I would say. So that will be the next video out, and yeah, we'll have to see where we go from there.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting, and I think that you fulfill a great role there. with just like lore stuff. And, you know, I love theorizing about stuff. I think one of my favorite things about the last time you were on was talking about heavy hitters. I know that maybe it wasn't the most kind of like set that was meant for you, but we did get into the weeds a little bit about like why the heck is Rhinar in this set? like what, like we came up with, like, almost in my mind it's canon, right? Because we talked about it, that Rhinar was like coming to find KO and then he's gonna like unite the brutes or something like that. I still think that'd be a really cool storyline. LSS, if you're listening, we know you are. But you know, it is so cool. Now, heavy hitters, I do want to ask, since there were some stories that were put out. So when I was preparing for the podcast today, I went on to the Mothership site and I went to the lore tab and I just saw the stories tab. So I clicked on it and the first thing that came up, no part the Mistveil stuff, but there were a bunch of heavy hitters stuff. One for each new hero out of heavy hitters. Now, I just saw it, so I haven't had a chance to read them all. I'm assuming you at least looked at them. Is there anything of like note that is worth discussing there before we kind of like, you know, say goodbye to heavy hitters and say hello to Part the Mistveil?
Not really, except for one thing that I found pretty interesting. So most of the stories were just kind of very fluffy pieces. They were just kind of there to, I don't know, kind of get the general theme across of what the hero was about. There wasn't too much of substance there, but the one thing I found very interesting is about KO's missing arm. So we know now that he did lose it from fighting a beast, but not in the way that you'd think. So he fought this beast. I'll see if I can actually find the name of what the beast was. It was a big lava worm in the desert.
Yes.
So he fought this beast, probably the same beast that you see on Ready to Roll, the card. And it had bitten and severely damaged his arm. But KO himself was the one to rip his arm off. Which is a very KO thing to do. Yeah, he ripped his own arm off. He didn't actually have it bitten off. It was damaged and unusable, but yeah, he decided it was dead weight and decided to rip his own arm off, which is pretty funny.
I mean, if there was a more brute thing to do, I don't know what it would be, because I mean, it's kind of badass. So I don't know. I mean, obviously he ripped off his arm and then in constructed, it's really helped him out quite a bit because he's super good. Probably in a living legend. He's
crazy
soon.
Good. Yep.
But, you know, in terms of the other heroes, you know, I think we kind of had the general sense of what Kasai was doing. The cards really told the story there. Raise an army was like obviously what she was trying to do. Raise an army, you know, make a bunch of gold to pay these mercenaries and stuff like that to kind of, I guess, return to Volcor, which, you know, if Phi LLs soon, they might try to return to Volcor sooner rather than later, since Dromai's just left. And then, you know, Victor is funny enough with Victor, right? You know, you can make the hero as cool and flesh him out as much as you want. People are still going to find a meme, and the meme was the horse. So I want to get your take there. You know, is the horse is the horse the actual hero here? or is this just a meme?
I would definitely like the horse to be the hero. I mean, that would be some interesting information, like even legitimately like discussing like a horse is prevalent on Wraith. I mean, that was like what not one of the first horses. I'm thinking the first horse we've actually seen in Flesh and Blood was probably on Spoils of War, back in Crucible of War. But like, you know, it seems like they are one of the creatures that roams the land. You know, how they cultivated and bred, and you know, where did this horse come from? Was it from the Northern Realms as well? You know,
I mean,
there's something there you could discuss.
Maybe. I mean, one of my favorite books when I was a kid was A Horse and His Boy from the Chronicles of Narnia series. And I mean, that horse was pretty much a main character. So, we could be looking at a horse and his horse and his Victor boy scenario going on right now. But and then I think it's worth noting too before we say goodbye to heavy hitters that, and this is true as like to their card borders as well, as Olympia and Betsy. They are the gladiator like realm cards, heroes, right? Because they have the distinct borders, right? And maybe they just are there, and maybe we'll see more heroes like this that like just exist in this world. They're not really part of the story. They are part of the place, right? Where Prism and Bolton are part of the story of Solana and what's going on there. Levia, Chain, Vincent are very much part of this huge story of this War of the Monarchs, where Betsy and Olympia, it's just like, this is their life, right? They are existing. They're just people in this world. And do you think this is a good idea for the game to have those kind of people? Because they're like legendary in their own right? Like in terms of like their status at the deathmatch arena. But do you think we'll get more of this kind of like, we're not part of the story, but we just exist in this world? What's your take on that?
I think that's very important. One of the biggest things I had seen people asking for from the lore is just more fleshing out. Because obviously, with the game being as young as it is, it does need to initially focus on like a main storyline. But just having all these like side characters, people like Kavdane and Genus, we've seen absolutely no lore about them, but just having them exist means that the world is more alive. And that's why I also want to see focus on areas of the world outside of just like the main 8 regions, which is why I like the idea of the deathmatch arena, because it's not one of the main 8 regions. So yeah, I think it's a good thing that they're doing that. But I just wanted a bit more lore from heavy hitters. It was really a letdown. I was just waiting, and then even when they did release some extra lore, they didn't even bother to advertise it. I saw no mention of it on any of their socials, and it was only through word of mouth that I actually found out that there was lore, which is kind of a shame, unfortunately. But
it seems like they're not focusing. I mean, I don't want to make assumptions here of what LSS is doing, but like they certainly like. So my take is, and this is something that when I had Alex Norville on a while ago, this is probably a year ago at this point, and he mentioned that there is it seemed like there was going to be a shift of a lot of storytelling through the cards, right? We're seeing a lot with even, from heavy hitters like edge ahead, like there's like things going on in the background. It's a part of the story, and even Ready to Roll and I guess like Knucklehead and stuff like that. It's like telling a little bit of a story through the cards, and we've already had that. It's just I think we both would want a little bit more supplemental stuff to that, not just the cards, because like even with 2 of the heroes from heavy hitters, we got 2 specializations in the expansion slots of Part the Mistveil, Visit Goldmane Estate, which helps flesh out a little bit of what Victor's doing, which is going back home to get daddy's money, and then Visit the Golden Anvil for Olympia, where Olympia is like all about like, what, I'll go get new weapons and stuff like that. Like that's what I want to do. So it's just I think it's a little bit of a shame we're not getting the supplemental stuff in writing, but maybe there are plans. Our plans are measured in centuries, as they say. So that could be the case. So speaking of, maybe not liking heavy hitters the most, but you had to have liked something. So I want to talk about your fresh faves out of the heavy hitters set. And first is going to be, who was your favorite hero?
So I'm going to say KO.
Okay.
But I don't know if you accept this alternate answer, so I'm giving you KO as like the backup. I'm gonna say Brutus Sumerudus.
Oh, what? You know what?
Which, yeah, he's the Judge Pack hero for Heavy Hitters season, and he is at the Deathmatch Arena. He is the referee, which is what Sumerudus means. Basically means referee. Yeah, that's my favorite hero. If you accept that answer.
You know what? I didn't because Gary said it last week, and I didn't accept it. I will accept it for you, just in spite of you, Gary.
I haven't listened to the past episode yet. I need to.
But yeah, Brutus is very cool. Very cool. Great answer. What was your favorite weapon? We had some cool weapons.
So for the rest of these cards, I'm going to give you 2 answers because my favorite of all of the remaining answers were all expansion slot cards.
Okay.
So I'll give you an answer that was actually in the core set. So my initial answer was Graven Call. The dagger for assassin, which all the assassin stuff that came out in the expansion slot and in part the Mistveil is making me regret selling out of assassin. I might have to try and go back into it. But Graven Call was like really in the vein of what I like to do when I played assassin, which was play very control-y, build up a bunch of silvers. I was playing cards like pick a card, any card, just to generate more silver. And Graven Call being able to like freely destroy it by throwing it with like flick knives and then having it come back stronger and be like a decent, somewhat decent weapon for its cost. Was just really interesting to me. So Graven Call, and the artwork is sick as well.
Oh yeah.
Outside of that, I would say probably Parry Blade, just because I really like the idea of using a weapon to block.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'd always thought a Parry Blade would be really interesting. So
it certainly is, and might get its time in the sun with the new Olympia card. To be honest, I mean, it's a weapon that breaks that you can replace, which is kind of cool. So, what was your favorite equipment?
Favorite equipment, Evo Magneto. just because, like the idea of yoinking someone's stuff and the name and the artwork is just really funny to me. So just for the meme factor, Evo Magneto. Otherwise, I'd say Grains of Blood Spill. That card seems bonkers good.
Yeah.
Just being able to like, everyone's played Flesh and Blood and had those turns where you've had extra resources just lying around at the end of the turn. Grains of Blood Spill just absorbs it for your next turn, which is just so good, especially for Warrior. So, yeah, that's my answer for that.
And it's like I like that you can also choose, like if you so want, you can choose to like put it into the bracers or something like that. But you got to make that decision. Do you want the resource later, or you want the damage this turn? Which is always a lot of fun. What was your favorite other card from the set? The card you put in your deck?
Sonata Galaxia, obviously, because I'm a Runeblade main. And that card seems really fun with Vinset. Just because I run Runeblood Barrier with Vinset. So like grabbing it out of your deck with a card seems really good. Otherwise, I would say Cast Bones. Now I'm not a Brute player, but that card is really cool. I love the artwork, very shamanistic vibes. And the card itself is just crazy good. Like, every time I see my opponent play it, they're hitting at least 3 to 4. And occasionally they do hit the Fabled 6 and they get the agility token. I'm like, man, I better buckle up for next turn because it's coming.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, I mean, KO, almost, like, I feel like almost always hits the 6, at least when I play against them. And then, I do like it's weird. Like Cast Bones feels a little bit too consistent in KO, but like I love the idea of Cast Bones in other brutes because it's like, let's see what we got. Let's see what's going on. It'd be a kind of a cool thing to do. To be honest, I never even thought about this. Like the turn you want to flip with Levia, you just like, I'm gonna Cast Bones. Let's see what we get. And past turn, I flip to consume, and then I have a really wild turn coming up, but. I could theorize all day. Now, let's talk about Mysteria. We're going to the home of, I think, Katsu, right?
Yes.
And as well as some other heroes. But What can you give us a little bit of an overview of what is going on in Mysteria? Because it's a very it's going to sound stupid to say, but it's a very mystical kind of looking like area, right? It's almost so peaceful. And funny enough, like it's flesh and blood. So obviously we're going to be fighting a little bit, but it's happening in this really peaceful place.
So I went and did a bunch of research last night, and I've got a bunch of notes to the side. So I'm going to go through and talk about some stuff. So a general overview of Mysteria. So it's located on the eastern coast of Wraith. It's northeast of Volcor and southeast of Aria. So over that side. It's a misty, mountainous area steeped heavily in tradition and ancestry that is somewhat of an isolationist society. So they tend not to care too much about what's going on outside of the region. A little bit like Aria. Although Aria's reason is because they have the barrier between them. So people can't freely travel into their region. They can with Mysteria, but they tend not to care what's going on outside. Very heavily Asian-inspired theme. So you've got ninjas, assassins, monks. And it's the home of Katsu, Benji, Ira, and previously Uzuri. Uzuri did come from there. I think it was her father that lived in Mysteria. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that. Plus, obviously, the new heroes, Nu, Enigma, and Zen. So, in terms of how the society works, so people who live within Mysteria live in hidden villages. I guess a little bit like Naruto, if anyone's watched Naruto. And they're located on steep mountains and jagged cliffs. So, you're going to have to climb to get to most of these villages. And there's lots of like rope bridges and narrow stairways. So you can kind of think of it a little bit like how, I guess, Machu Picchu is in the real world, where it's just sat on top of mountains, basically. And every occupation within Mysteria, they're encompassed under something called the 7 Arts. So it's a form of education for pretty much every Mysterian to follow. And Mysterians are taught aspects of all of these 7 arts, but as they get older and they start to focus more on whatever occupation they want to do, that's when they'll focus on a particular art. So the main 7, there's 3 major and 4 minor. So the 3 major, you have Art of the Signs, which is a study of language and culture, recording history, composing poetry and songs, very bardic style stuff. Then you have Art of the Hand, which is the combat art, of course, punching people, kicking people, as all the ninjas that we've seen do. It teaches the importance of strength and balance, offensive and defensive combat techniques. 2 of the unarmed fighting techniques are Tau strikes, focusing on striking and parrying. So think of things like head jab, open the center, and Fato techniques, which utilize footwork and maintaining balance. So that would be things like leg tap. What's the follow-on cut from leg tap?
Oh,
leg
that's a good question.
Things like blackout kick, the card in between leg tap and blackout kick, hurricane technique, that sort of thing. Then you have Art of the Sparrow, which is more of a generalized art on agility and balance. So people who specialize in this use their speed to gain an advantage on their opponents, as well as deflecting attacks. So they're very hard to hit. Then you have the minor arts, which are Art of the Serpent, which is very basically just stealth and assassination, learning to blend in to plain sight. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about someone who might use that a lot in the near future. And then we have some just like general society stuff like Art of the Earth, which is herbalism, farming, tending to nature. Interesting thing to note about the agriculture of Mysteria, they focus a lot on using hanging gardens. And I would assume that's because where they're located, there isn't much soil if you're sitting on top of like a rocky mountain cliff. So they will use that to grow things like rice and whatnot. So hanging gardens, very cool. Art of the Stone, masonry and building. This is your working, your crafting, creating art. So forging, smithing, stonework, metalwork, woodwork. And then you have Art of the Willow, which is tailoring and weaving. They are also responsible, people who specialize in it, for creating masks. So Mask of Momentum would have been made by someone who's specialized in Art of the Willow. Then there are also secret arts. So clans and households are a very big part of Mysterian society. And each major household has its own secret art that they pass down from generation to generation that only people within the household are allowed to know. So there are also grandmasters, which are people that kind of specialize very heavily in certain arts. A lot of them will actually create their own secret arts as well. So it's not necessarily tied to just households, but individuals can also make their own arts. But yeah, as I said, clans are a big part of Mysterian society. There are some major ones to note. A lot of these will not be familiar, but there will be a couple. So you have Sanjin, which they're credited for the secret art of the Eternal Crane. So things like crane dance most likely come from this clan. You have Miharu, creating some of the best armor in the region. Yi Jun, I'm going to butcher these names, by the way.
That's all right.
Creators of some of the most remarkable clothing. You have Ishigaki, talented stonemasons that carve buildings into the cliffs themselves.
Wow.
So a lot of the buildings are often on like stilts, but some clans like this one do actually carve out the stone. You have Ikaru, which might not be initially familiar to a lot of people. The Ikaru clan is adept at defensive martial styles, and they are the creators of the whirling mist blossom technique, which is one of Ira's staples, because Ira, her clan is the Ikaru clan, as well as her brother Jin, and Mistress Ikaru was the creator, which I have talked about, I guess, before. Maybe not so much on the podcast, but she is kind of an interesting character. She is the one that initially held Edge of Autumn and kind of cursed Edge of Autumn. There's some weird stuff about Ira's backstory that we don't really know, but so that's the Ikaru clan. Then we have the Mugenshi, which might be a lot more familiar of a name. So this is a clan that has secluded themselves in the Gorge of 1,000 Winds long ago, after they became inflicted with an ancient curse that continues to take lives of the clan members. So this is the clan of Katsu and Benji. So you might remember the name from Mugenshi Release,
Yep.
which is a line in a combo, a very cool combo. And then we have another clan which, as part of my research for these notes, I went through and looked at all of the cards from the set and every card that had flavor text, which I'm very happy to say a lot of cards have flavor text, which is a good shift. So there's a clan called the Nasu Ka, which I'll talk a little bit more about them when we get to Nu. But they may be the creators of an art called the Art of the Viper. So on the card Fang Strike, the flavor text says, "The Art of the Viper is a lethal tradition that strikes when the prey is most vulnerable." And that is a direct quote from Nu. So I think that might be Nu's clan, possibly. We'll have to wait until we actually get proper lore from Part the Mistveil. But yeah, so they're the major clans. However, there are a couple other groups as well. So those who have read Katsu's backstory might be familiar with the name Aui's Scales. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Aui. Aui. So this is an organization of spies and assassins with motives we don't quite understand yet. All we know is that they are heavily opposed to the Crimson Haze, which is Ira's kind of group that she made. I think I might have discussed it before, but in Katsu's backstory, there is a line that says he's talking to a member of the Crimson Haze, and he says, the Aoi Scales have been opposed to our founder's like ideals for centuries, which brings the question up: is Ira dead,
Yeah.
That's the whole theory of, is Ira still alive from this curse? Because the way he says it makes it sound like Ira is like the founder, but the guy could also be talking about Mistress Ikairu, who is the founder of the clan itself. But yeah, that was just something interesting to note. And then in the flavor text, there's also two other groups. There is the Kaigomo, which are an unknown organization. All we know is that they deploy Ronin, which I hope I get this right. In real life, I believe Ronin are basically samurai that don't serve a feudal lord. So normally samurais would serve a lord. I believe Ronin are kind of the same type of warriors, but they just don't have a lord. So this is a group that deploys Ronin across Mysteria to ensure peace prevails. And we see this flavor text on the card Wide Blue Yonder. And then outside of that, this next group is probably the most interesting, and I think will be the one with the most lore implications when we get the stories from Part the Mistveil. So this is the Kotori. So this is a group of individuals that have an association, it seems, with the moon, but there are a few cards in which they're mentioned. So Emissary of Moon, that card has flavor text that says, "Our future extends beyond Mysteria. The wisdom of the moon should be shared with the world," which is a quote from Ning, Kotori Moonseeker. Then we have Emissary of Tides. "In the depths of the ocean, a world unseen awaits." That's kind of hard to say. "Where the songs of the tides reveal secrets of a forgotten age," which is by Anhei Kotori Wavebender. And then probably the most interesting line. So this is on Emissary of Wind, which in the artwork, we see this individual standing in an area where off in the distance you can see Solana. And it says, "I must confer with the guardians of these lands. The encroaching darkness is but a prelude. The wind dares not murmur of what follows," which is said by Dan Lee Kotori Gale Warden. So it seems like people from Mysteria are aware of the War of the Monarchs and the battles that are happening in Solana, which is extremely interesting. So
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. I wouldn't even have picked that up looking at Emissary Wind until you just know. I'm looking at it right now. And I mean, what are the implications there? Is there we have or is like the monastery or the forces of the shadow, are they starting to kind of fight a two-front war here where they're fighting Solana and maybe creeping into, Mysteria here?
I think it's more of all the other regions in Wraith are kind of realizing that if Solana falls, it's probably not going to be good for them. Very similar to real life politics. If someone attacks an ally of yours, everyone kind of jumps on that person that attacked your ally. So, even though Mysteria is an isolationist society, it may benefit them to involve themselves to an extent to try and ensure that the Demonastery doesn't take over Wraith. Because that will probably be very bad. I don't think the Demonastery is very kind to many of the people that they come across. So, and we've even seen, Aria, which is also an isolationist society, take part in the War of the Monarchs to an extent. With Bravo and Briar and Lexi and Old Him coming to help. So, yeah, I think it's just a matter of, people in Mysteria aren't stupid. They're not blind to the outside world, but they're just sort of taking in the sights and thinking to themselves, maybe we should intervene. So
yeah, it is interesting and funny that you bring up the Aria heroes that are helping in what's the name of that card where they're all, it's like the
United We Stand.
United We Stand. They're all over there, and that kind of alludes to the fact that the Aria heroes are all on the right side of history or on the good guy's side. And it depends on who you ask. I mean, some people might think that the monastery is the good side. We don't know. We've talked about that. And it's not for us to decide yet, but we can theorize. But are we looking at another set where perhaps all three of these heroes are the good guys? I mean, one of them seems a little devious, I will say. But actually, let's get into it, right? I want to talk about Zen because, you know, when Mysteria, we knew we were going to Mysteria, you got to have a ninja, right? And we got one in Zen. And it's a lot different than both Katsu, Benji, and Fi, right? Where this is the Crouching Tiger hero. What have you gathered about Zen? Obviously, with a name like that, is probably really into being pretty chilled out. Maybe, I don't know. I think a lot of his cards hint, and as well as some of what we've talked about already, is this kind of defensive style of like kind of being a ninja. What's your take here on Zen?
Yeah, so his initial sort of story stuff on his page that we've gotten so far doesn't say too much. All we know is that he's a pilgrim that travels Mysteria. And it says that he walks between the physical and mystical world. So he's very in touch with this overall kind of cosmic theme that's been prevalent in a lot of the stuff from Part the Mistveil, which we'll dive into. But yeah, it says he upholds the virtues of justice and righteousness. His personal quest is to witness all aspects of his land and restore harmony to the land of Mysteria. So, doesn't say too much about what exactly he's doing. But yeah, it seems like it does mention in his lore that he was kind of born with this innate kind of connection to kind of the cosmos and the world and the energy of chi as well. So yeah,
which chi is obviously the marquee kind of ability of these mystic heroes, right? They can transcend, right? They go into this state of chi, like, which is like, you know, like kind of focusing energy, and you get these special resource cards that, you know, flip over. You know, is this a, I don't know, like how to phrase this, but like chi, is this kind of like going to be unique to Mysteria, right? I know that typically the talent is always like locked to a region, but, you know, kind of, will we see other heroes in other regions kind of not do chi exactly, but like kind of like focus to a different state of like transcendedness, right? Where they might be focusing on another energy. But what did you make of chi? Like, does this kind of explain these heroes and why they are, you know, so kind of like, zenned out in a way?
Yeah, so I feel like chi is probably tied to whatever Aesir is tied to this region. So I would say it's less of Etherean, more kind of soft confirmed, that each region kind of has its own Aesir that kind of governs a lot of the theming. You know, we had the Aesir of Fire for Volcor, we have Soul for Solana, and I feel like there's some sort of cosmic, otherworldly sort of theme or energy that people are able to tap into, where there is kind of this like overall layer of just like kind of like invisible energy that people are just kind of tapping into. It seems less of like chi in the more traditional sense in our world, where it's like an energy that's within, and more of like an external force that people are kind of tapping into. So that's kind of my vibe with it, and I feel like it's going to be exclusive to Mysteria for sure. I mean, other people in Wraith have kind of done similar things, like the elemental heroes. There's the Flow and Aria, which is kind of like a similar thing, where, you know, people are able to tap into that, like Bravo was. But yeah, it definitely seems like chi is the Mysteria exclusive thing. So whatever the Aesir is in Mysteria, whether it's the Aesir of Mist or, you know, maybe something a little less on the nose, you know, something along those lines. So that's kind of my initial take.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you kind of transcend into this like otherworldly kind of focus, right? That's kind of what's happening in the game, right? And you know, there have been talks, like developers have said, I can't wait for you to go to a region that we haven't even mentioned yet, you know. And we had talked about like a different different kind of region, like a otherworldly region. This feels to me like, just my first take is like, this is the closest like the actual inhabitants of Wraith are getting to that, right? Like maybe up, it just, to me, it makes sense. Up in the mountains, this totally focused state, they're on the cusp of like getting into that next realm, in a different way than say, like the demonastery, and like kind of going into, the really dark place where, bad things or sometimes good things are happening. Is that like, does that theory hold water?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, I mean, I guess just like in real life, when people look up at the stars at night, they think of the heavens. They call it the heavens. You look up at the heavens, and it's kind of that fabled place where deities and gods lie, is up in the stars, space per se, but kind of not space. So yeah, I definitely feel like out of all the places in Wraith, like Mysteria obviously being so high up, it's kind of more of a closer connection to whatever deities there are in the world of Wraith. So yeah, that does sort of hold a lot of mist. Your theory. Yeah.
Now, speaking of mist, Enigma. We got a new illusionist, and this is a very much spirits themed, ward, all these fun, like kind of like ghostly things, spectral shields in a different way that we've seen them before. What's going on with Enigma here?
Yeah, so I think Enigma is the most important hero in terms of the story for part of Mistveil. So a lot of that comes from, like, specifically her lore, but also a lot of what we see on cards. So obviously the moon is very heavily prevalent in a lot of the themes for this set. I mean, the booster pack has artwork of someone wading into water with the moon in front of them. But Enigma herself, so she was born into a lineage of a group called the Ledgers, which is some sort of group that has to sort of help balance and protect the cosmic chi, is what it's called, which is, I guess, chi in general. Mm-hmm. All of it's probably cosmic. It says that she watches over the realm, seeking guidance from the whispers of her ancestors, a custodian of the delicate equilibrium between dream and reality. But an important thing that it says in her lore is it says she was reborn into the lineage of the Ledgers. So I kind of have a bit of a theory with what Enigma is. So we've also seen that there's a different version of Enigma that you can get, a special version in the gold packs from the boosters, which is Enigma New Moon. And her card has a special border to it. So this sort of treatment that we've seen to region borders, I think this is the fourth time we've seen it. So we've seen this on Shiana, Taylor, and the Emperor, where they've had the region border, but it's been altered in like color, which to me kind of signifies very like important kind of characters, I guess. I have a feeling that Enigma is a celestial being of some sort. So I'm gonna have a bit of a crazy theory here. This is yeah. Hold on to your seat for this. So there is a legend of something called the Exalted One. So this is written in the lore book. I think it might be on the website in the Aria section. I don't know. But the Exalted One was the creator of life, brought light and life to Wraith when it was dark. But one of the things they did was create the sun and moon. So when they created the sun and moon, they also created two beings. One of them is, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Badir, I think, Badr, which was the sun, and then Azra, which is the moon. I have a feeling that we also don't know the origins of Prism, and Prism is heavily tied to Sol, and Sol is kind of an entity of light, the sun. I have a feeling that both Prism and Enigma, both being illusionists, are aspects or avatars of Badir and Azra, the sun and the moon. And I think it is kind of a portion of their power that's been personified and put onto Wraith to help protect it. Which definitely makes sense because Enigma being reborn to me sounds a little bit like reincarnation. So I think there's something going on with that. I don't know if you think that theory is weird. I would like to know your thoughts on it. But
well, when I saw a lot of this stuff, I immediately thought about Moonwish, to be honest, right? You know, which comes along with Sunkiss. And, you know, basically what you're saying right now reminds me of both those things. Now, we get a little bit of lore on Sunkiss, which says, separated by power greater than their own, they chase each other across the sky, wishing for nothing more than to reunite, which is interesting, right? You know, maybe like a little bit of a Prism, Enigma, Fusion Ha, you know, something going on. I don't know. I mean, listen, I don't write these stories, but you know, if you want to listen to me, everything will be Dragon Ball Z, I guess. But so it is really interesting, and I'm just curious, like because we saw that gold pack thing, right, with Enigma New Moon, and I'm like, is that the only hero we're gonna? Apparently, maybe it's not the only hero we're gonna get out of there. Or maybe it'll be a bunch of different Enigmas. Which is, I mean, it'd be kind of, I think, it was kind of lame. It was a bunch of different Enigmas. I would like a different Zen and maybe a different New as well, you know, to kind of go on theme. But it is really interesting. And, like, I'm still processing what that gold pack is. So, like,
that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, it threw me for a loop. But I really like the idea of, like, this kind of, you know, reincarnated being that could just, like, be I think smart from a writing perspective for the lore. Like, this could be a real role filler within the story going forward, right? So it is very interesting.
Yeah. There's a few other things as well. So obviously Enigma kind of has the title of New Moon. So there were some cards that had flavor text that kind of alluded to the moon, which I thought were kind of important. So like Moon Chakra says, Moon's ancient whisper, chakra aglow in the night's dance, awakens the mind's eye. Then there was also Waxing Spectre, which is a Mystic Illusionist card. It says, the new moon, which I'm assuming is probably Enigma, the new moon watches over the reverent pilgrims, oft sending Wakuro to grant them her celestial blessings. Wakuro seems to be some sort of illusory creature that she could probably summon, I think. But to grant them her celestial blessings makes it sound like she's more of a deity. And then First Tenant of Chi Moon says, the moon unveils hidden truths within the darkness of night, illuminating the unseen mysteries of the world. And then obviously we have cards like Attune with Cosmic Vibration and Cosmic Awakening, which there's really something going on with like the cosmos, the moon, revealing the truths of the world. So maybe that is something to do with the Aesir. Maybe the Aesir for Mysteria is the Aesir of the moon, or I don't know, you know, something weird like that. But
well,
yeah.
When I hear the mention of pilgrims, I just think back to Zen, right? Who obviously has this mystic talent as well. And, you know, and if this is some kind of reincarnated and maybe like totally repeatable reincarnation of a deity, you know, maybe Enigma blessed Zen with, you know, this mystic ability. As a child, he always had it, apparently, right? And one of the pilgrims could be a chosen one, right? A chosen pilgrim to kind of like wander Mysteria for Enigma, which is pretty neat. Now, the question is, where does New come into the story here? Because New also has the mystic talent, but doesn't seem to be doing it as chilled out as the other two.
Yeah, so her place in the story I'm not sure of at the moment, but essentially the backstory for New. So within the Mist Cloak Gully, which we will talk about a little bit, lies a building known as the Mistcloak Tea House. So tea houses are kind of a big thing for Mysteria, very Asian themed, of course. This tea house is a lot more alluring than your average business, with many women playing the role of tea house hosts. The head of the establishment is New. So New is the owner of this business, with her workers luring unsuspecting patrons into a false sense of security. So her workers are called Vipressa. Obviously Viper being the theme there. As to why they lure these people in, it's kind of unknown. There's maybe a chance that she's kind of draining the life force out of them. At least in a lot of the artwork, it kind of seems like that. Or even if it's not life force, it'd be secrets, information. Mysteria being, very ninja and assassin and spy themed, information would be very important, especially to Nu herself, who is an assassin. So it would make sense for her to use the tea house as a means to gain the information. But as we said earlier, she's possibly a member of Clan Nasu Ka. Another card that kind of backs this up is Hiss, which has the flavor text: the mistresses, I hate saying that word, of Clan Nasu Ka weave pleasure with hand and limb, painting a vision of desire across the scarlet tapestries. So at the very least, her Vipressa are from that clan, but I would probably say that Nu herself is also from Clan Nasu Ka. So very interesting stuff. The fact that she has this kind of clan that she's a part of. So
yeah. I mean, it feels very assassin, right? And the artwork definitely gives the impression that she is, or the Vipressa are, a certain kind of succubus here, right? Even the card effects, right? Banish cards gain life, etc., etc. Like that seems what's going on here. It's interesting, kind of where we landed with Enigma and Zen, kind of like almost like kind of being like this blessed mystic kind of, talented heroes, where this doesn't seem like that savory of a kind of endeavor that Nu's in, but it happening at Mistcloak Gully, which is the Fabled, and the Fabled, it does transcend, right? So for those of you who don't know what the Fabled was, I hate that it is sideways. The first attack that is Mistcloak Gully, it's a landmark mystic instant, cost 1, right? First attack that targets you each turn gets -1, and then at the beginning of your end phase, destroy this unless you've pitched, played, or defended with a blue card. And then if you pitched, played, or defended with a blue card, this turn transcend. So like turn into a chi. So a whole place turning into chi is something.
yeah.
Yeah. So maybe rather than Nu being blessed, she just happens to be blessed in a blessed place, which gives her kind of these special powers. I mean, I don't know if you look at a lot of the art for Nu, right? It doesn't look like she's venturing far out of Mistcloak Gully. Is that something that we might be looking at here, where maybe she's landlocked in a way? Like, this is her business, and her business gives her these abilities and allows her to kind of be this kind of succubi type thing. What's your take here with the landmark that turns into an energy?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because they don't say too much about Mistcloak Gully in the lore. They mostly just kind of refer to it as a place. Let me just quickly bring up here. So here we are. So Mistcloak Gully on the website says the ancestral home of the House of Sanjin, which is the house that does the crane technique. Mistcloak Gully is a sprawling collection of steep cliffs surrounding a natural lake. The waterfalls within the gully produce a thick blanket of mist, which obscures many of the buildings that lie deep within. Far below, a fast-moving stream travels through the gully, the sound of rushing water echoing up the stone walls. So that's pretty much everything it says in the lore, but I would say that this waterfall that they talk about is probably the same location as Nu's sacred art under current desires probably takes place in, where she's kind of wading into the water with a waterfall. It's hard to say. So obviously Mist is very tied to Mysteria, hence the name, but I feel like possibly this is the place where maybe the Aesir of the region resides. It could be maybe a place that's higher up, that's easier to reach sort of the cosmos. I don't know. It's just really weird that maybe it's just a gameplay thing where a landmark turns into chi, but the fact that it transcends makes me think that maybe there's like a portal or something to this cosmos area within this place. Maybe the mist is kind of, if you walk into the mist, you walk out in the cosmos or something like that. I don't know. It's very weird, but I mean, I really love the art. So
yeah, it's awesome. I mean, my take. So like, if you look at both Siren's Call and the Sacred Art Undercurrent Desires, right? I think it's definitely hinting at like this is kind of like the source, right, of something, right? At least for Nu. You know, and it would kind of give some reasoning as to why she's mystic talented, right? Because she is in this kind of like source of this really, really strong stuff. I mean, it's like it kind of like is evident in a lot of her cards, but you look at like Zen was kind of like always had this kind of knack, right? Enigma might just be a deity, right? So everything kind of makes sense where this is kind of Nu's domain, and you know, perhaps she came upon this and it just helped her run this awful business that she runs. But it's very interesting, and like the Sacred Art Undercurrent Desires makes a lot of sense, right? Because the other ones are like the other sacred arts, I should say. So what do we got? Sacred Immortal Lunar Shrine, right? Something's going on there with you know, you see like the ancestors in the background, the moon, something's going on. And then you got Jade Tiger Domain, where literally Zen is, I mean, crisscross applesauce, like focusing on crouching tigers, right? The wind, right? So we got wind, moon, mist, whatever. Where she Nu is literally just wading into a waterfall, you know, just and being very scandalous, if I may say. You know, people are loving this card. I don't blame them, but it's not my cup of tea. But you know, it obviously the focus here is that kind of mist in the waterfall, where the other two are focused on the character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that's the case. There is kind of a quote that's associated with each of the sacred arts. I'll read them out now. I don't think they're too important, but so Nu's sacred art Undercurrent Desires says, with each velvet touch and whispered smile, the tapestry of fate weaves an epic of woe and anguish. Nu's Immortal Lunar Shrine says, as my memories start to fade, the moonlight carries me home to a place where sky meets water, where the cycle begins anew. And then Zen's is actually, his quote on the website is actually the same flavor text as a card called Unleashed, which is just like a common. Two paths beckon, one disciplined under the seething sun, the other unleashed fury, a beast unchained. So,
the duality of man.
The duality of man, either sun or tiger, I guess.
There are two crouching tigers within you.
Yeah. But yeah, there's also like a few quotes about inner chi as well. I'll just read out enigmas, which I think is the most important. The true meaning of tradition lies beyond what the mind, body, and soul remembers. Once past, present, and future are intertwined, you shall know true enlightenment. So, there you go.
I don't know, man.
There's interesting lore stuff there that's just kind of, it's vague enough that you can kind of get a sense as to what they're telling you, but it's not enough to really pinpoint it.
I mean, these Mysteria is very mysterious, as
Yes.
you can tell, but it definitely makes the mind kind of like run a little crazy. Cycle with like new moon. Like, well, are we looking at full moon enigma and these other cards? Waxing gibbous, waning gibbous. I don't know. I don't remember that lesson in school, but it's all pretty cool and crazy. I'm super stoked. Hopefully, we get a little bit more oomph out of LSS with the lore, but I think we really like dug in, like from what we can tell today, and it's been a lot of fun. So we do have some listener questions if you want to see what they have to ask.
Yes.
The first is from William from the Table Pick, great YouTube channel. Can anyone have ghost cats like in Restless Coalescence, or do I need to be an illusionist?
I did see someone, I don't know if it was him, on Twitter. Someone put up Knick-Knack Bric-a-Brac. In the full card art, there's actually kind of a ghost type cat. Actually, I'm going to see if I can pull that up, because I just want to confirm this. Knick-Knack Brick. Let's see what comes up.
That'd be crazy.
So I can't see it on this version. Let's see, there's like an extended art. Okay, there is kind of a cat that I'm seeing.
Wow.
It's in the bottom left on the extended art card. I don't know. It seems like that cat is probably something to do with one of the knickknacks that this character in the artwork has. So I don't know. It seems like you don't have to be an illusionist, but if you're an illusionist, you could probably just freely summon them. So yeah, I'd still say there's hope for you, Will.
Yeah, there's still hope, William. Next question comes from Greg, aka Doug Prentice, who states, with the limited lore we have for MST, who is the antagonist of the three characters and why is it Enigma? I don't think we think it's Enigma, to be honest.
I think Enigma's benevolent rather than malevolent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is a change of pace for illusionists, if you ask me.
It is kind of, yeah. Prism is, I mean, on the outside good, but the motives of Soul is questionable. And then obviously Dromire's just in it for herself. So Enigma's kind of a change of pace. I don't know. I'd say maybe Nu, but I feel like Nu isn't necessarily evil, just kind of in it for herself. Mm-hmm. Which isn't necessarily an evil thing. So I'm very curious to see where it goes. Obviously, I've talked a lot about why I think Enigma is the core of Part the Mistveil. But yeah, I'm interested to see if there is an antagonist per se, or if it's more just stories of the origins of the heroes. But yeah, I don't know where the story of Part the Mistveil is going, and if it's tied into the overall kind of War of the Monarchs thing. I feel like it's separate, but kind of related at the same time. It's hard to pinpoint. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is still kind of like us visiting every region, and I feel like once it's all visited, there's going to be like kind of multi-region sets again, like we saw with, I guess, Arcane Rising and Welcome to Wraith. I mean, those are technically multi-region, so who knows? Next question comes from Sigma, who we kind of covered some of this, but we still don't have lore for heavy hitters, and it seems none has yet come for MST, which we've mentioned multiple times. How disappointed are you, and do you know anything about why they stopped lore activity after the admittedly great EVO stories?
Yeah, in terms of information, I got no clue. I got no insider information, unfortunately. But if I were to take a guess, I think with the rate at which they were producing lore and the rate at which sets are coming out, the lore is much slower for them to create because they are a lot more deliberate in what they do. So I feel like Heavy Hitters was a set where they were like, okay, we're just going to go very light on the lore here to give us room to catch up. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they're kind of swinging it back with Part the Mistveil. I guess something I did learn when I was in an interview process to apply to be a writer at LSS, one of the things that they mentioned was that Robbie Wen, who does like the head of creative, he runs a very tight ship, is what I heard, which implies to me that he is very deliberate at what they create and when they release it. So there's definitely a plan there. I don't think they're like clueless to all this. I'm sure they've heard our cries, especially mine, posting on Twitter every month saying, "Where's the heavy hitters lore?" But yeah, I think they just needed a bit of a breather to catch up, because when did Bright Lights come out? Like
October,
November, around then. And then within 3 months we had heavy hitters.
It was a rather quick turnaround. I mean, this is a quick turnaround from heavy hitters, but obviously, like we said, not a lot of lore coming out of it. So I mean, with them creating like 3 to 4 sets a year, I could see them struggling to keep up with lore, at least at their current size. If they had a bigger team, maybe that would help. But at the same time, even with a bigger team, they still want to make sure that what they produce is of good quality. And so far, I don't think any of the lore that has come out has been necessarily bad. If anything, maybe a little lacking, but like the quality has always been pretty good. I don't think there's really been any story that I've read and been like, "Oh, this is garbage," you know? Yeah.
I think it's all been pretty good. I mean, yeah.
It's been a little lean, I guess.
Yeah.
We want more meat on the bone, and we're greedy, and that's okay. We're willing to admit it. Next question comes from Capola, who's asking the heavy and the hard-hitting questions here. If all the heroes of Wraith had to do a last hero standing for the ultimate glory in Wraith, who would win and why?
I had a big think about this. Gut instinct wanted to say Reinhardt, but I think
too reckless.
I think realistically, probably Starvo. Bravo in his Star of the Show form. Because not only can he take a hit, but he can also deal damage. Plus, he has the power of the flow behind him, and he can harness all the elements. And yeah, we know that elements are like the elemental power is pretty strong, considering, you know, the power of the ancients and whatnot. So I feel like he's a good balance between like mystical power and just like raw strength as well. So that's probably my bet. But if you have a different opinion, I'd like to know.
I mean, you're probably right, but I was going to say Levi, but, you know, I thought, you know, that would be kind of cool. Although, you know, I got to say Riptide probably is, you know, he has both sneaky traps and ranged attacks would probably help. And he's kind of big enough, I think he could brawl a little bit, but it's probably Starvo, to be honest.
I'm just picturing now, like, everyone's on like a big battlefield, just smashing each other to pieces, and Riptide sitting in the gutter, like, hey, they'll never see me in here, just like, you know, trying to skulk around. But it's like,
when
you're the one in the gutter, mate.
When they step on this trap, man.
Oh, just you wait.
And then the last question comes from Gary, aka Mr. Viz, who obviously geeks out about all things language in the game. Have you taken a look at the new Spectral Shield? Are you as convinced it's another language cipher as I am?
Yeah, it is. I wasn't sure at first. When I first saw this question, I was like, I don't know. It's probably just a bunch of, like, you know, runes or symbols or whatever. But I went and looked at it, and there are repeating symbols, which indicates to me that it's some sort of language. There's like kind of a main phrase that seems to be written on the center, because these tags are, well, these spectral shields appear to be these like tags. I don't know what you'd call them in Japanese mythology. There's like these tags or papers or seals that I think are used in some sort of like spiritual form to maybe like contain spirits. I just feel like that's something I've seen before. Whether or not it's like really true to, you know, traditional Japanese lore, I don't know, but it does make sense that spectral shields would kind of follow that theme. And there's like a center word that seems to be written, and it seems to be like a vertical language. But then there's also two other words that seem to be to the left and right that are kind of smaller. And I know the one on the left has like two of the symbols repeat. And one of those symbols is also in the main word. So there's definitely some sort of language there. As to like decoding it, that ain't gonna be me. I'm horrible at decoding languages. All the previous languages were decoded by other people. So, you know, it's probably something they will jump on. Maybe I'll take a crack at it, but I feel like at least at the moment, there's not enough of the symbols to really properly say what they are. But
I think I'm gonna crack it right now. Actually,
you gonna crack it?
No, I think I know. Let me just one sec. Bear with me, folks. Call in if you know. The Moonlighters.
I wonder if you're gonna. Oh, hang on. I think I might have just had an epiphany. Let me bring up the spectral shield real quick.
It says, stand by the gray stone when the thrush knocks, and the setting sun with the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole. There you go, moon letters from The Hobbit, folks. No.
Okay, I didn't see you doing that.
Okay,
so
do we crack it?
Give me a moment. Let me bring something up real quick. I'm gonna bring up the artwork. Just have a look at it. Okay, I don't think so.
Oh.
No, because that symbol would have to repeat. I was gonna say the amount of characters on this spectral shield. So the center has 5, and the words on the left and right have 3. I was wondering maybe if the spectral shield, the center line said Enigma, and the left and right said Nu and Zen. Because the one on the left has a symbol and then a different symbol that repeats twice. So if that symbol was U, but then that wouldn't work because Enigma doesn't have U in it, and Zen with the N. This is why I'm horrible at decoding languages. Yeah. I feel like you just kind of have to throw words and see if it fits with what's written on there. But yeah, I was very excited. I thought maybe I was onto something. But
well, hey, folks.
Unfortunately not.
Comment below if you think you found it out, but this has been a lot of fun, buddy, as always.
Yeah.
Can you please tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah. DeadSummerArt on YouTube. DeadSummerArt on Twitter. I don't know if I have art in my name. I think I do. I think Dead Summer was taken, unfortunately. You'll find me. Just look up DeadSummerArt on pretty much all socials. I'll be there. Obviously, Spotify. I'm going to start uploading more of my videos to Spotify. So if you prefer audio only, feel free to have a listen on there. You might be listening on Spotify already, like I do. Yeah, that's awesome. Pretty much it. So,
and you can find me on Twitter at freshbudspod. Check out the YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. The Buds Discord. Dead Summer Art is in the Buds Discord, and we have a lore channel. It's it's not as active, but just ping Dead Summer in there.
Got a question? I will come and answer. I'm always on Discord. So.
You're just summoned and like, here's the lore knowledge. Thank you. And then please check out my other podcast I do with my cousin, Fresh Juice, where we talk about indie video games. A lot of fun over there. That comes out weekly as well. And finally, I know you know, every single time I ask you about food, and I know you always say you're not the most adventurous eater, but what is something you're enjoying? I'm smelling some really delicious pulled pork in the next room that I'm going to eat right after this. And yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. I don't know. I always try and think of stuff I've eaten recently. My partner made a stir fry the other week, which that was all right. The vegetables in it weren't necessarily my favorite, but like the overall flavors was pretty good. I don't think I'd really had stir fry before that. So yeah, which is probably really surprising. Stir fry is kind of like one of those foods that everyone's tried at least once, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not the most adventurous, but
do you like
I don't know.
Soda? Like,
I do like soda occasionally. It depends on what it is.
What's your favorite? Like, what's one that, like, I don't have soda all the time, but if that's like on a menu or I see one in a fridge, I'll grab it.
Creaming soda. I really like creaming soda.
Creaming soda. We call it cream soda here, if that's the same thing.
Yeah. We have a brand here. I think it's Kirk's.
It's a brand?
Yeah, like Kirk's red creaming soda is what they call it. So our creaming soda sometimes, depending on what you get, can be like red colored, like a really rich red. But I've had traditional creaming soda that's more of a brown color.
Mm.
There's something about the cream. I just love anything that's like a very creamy, like sort of flavor to it. Any dish I like oftentimes will have some sort of like cheese or some creaminess to it. So, what's your favorite?
Oh, birch beer or like a root beer. I like, kind of like that really herbal flavor profile. I like some, like black licorice. I'll eat anything that's gonna make my taste buds like be like, what's going on? I'm all about it. But
I will say, because I have tried it, A&W.
Okay, yeah, the root beer.
Yeah. So we had it in stock for a little bit at the LGS that I used to work at, and I tried it. That is rancid. That is so bad. It tasted like almost like what did it taste like?
Some people say toothpaste.
Toothpaste, yeah. It tasted like toothpaste, and I was like, what the hell is this? How can anyone drink that? It was horrendous.
We love our root beer over here. I'll tell you that. I mean, there's wars over what's the best root beer to have. I think it's Barks. Some people say mug root beer. It's more of a mug root beer is more of a meme root beer, I would say.
It is. I see memes about mug, and
I think mug root beer sucks. So if anybody wants to fight me, let me know in the comments. But that's all the time we have, folks. You're the best, Kale. We don't have time for Charmer. Man, that's all right. We'll get to them eventually. And see you later.